All right, let's look at today's front page, July 24th, 2026. There is a lot going on, and honestly, it looks a little chaotic out there. But that's exactly why we're here. We're going to cut through all that noise and break down the absolute most critical stories you need to know today.
To keep things simple, we've split today's news cycle into four main beats. We're looking at global conflicts, domestic politics, what's happening in tech and AI, and finally, a wrap-up on crime and society. Let's dive right in.
So, starting right off the top with global conflicts and geopolitics, specifically the escalations we're seeing in the Middle East and Asia.
If you take even a quick glance at the international headlines today, you're going to see that the map is practically flashing red. We've got intense escalations popping up across several major hotspots right now, and understanding these friction points is absolutely crucial for grasping the broader geopolitical landscape.
A lot of this friction boils down to three massive issues. First, there's the ongoing war with Iran and the very real threat it poses to the global oil market. Then, we have this highly controversial Saudi-US nuclear agreement that has everyone talking. And finally, some actual physical confrontations playing out in the South China Sea.
On that Iran front, we just got a critical update directly from the Oval Office. President Trump made it clear that while negotiations are actively happening, he, quote, doesn't think it's time yet for a deal. And this hesitation is coming right at a moment when the global oil market is facing its absolute biggest threat since this whole conflict started. It's a high-stakes standoff with massive economic ramifications.
And it gets even more complicated. Reports are showing that the Pentagon has left casualty totals uncorrected on their website, meaning past deaths and injuries seem to have just vanished from the public record. At the same time, analysts are pointing out a major tactical shift. Iran has effectively weaponized the Strait of Hormuz. It's gotten to the point where neighboring countries are literally having to build entirely new infrastructure around it just to get by.
We're also seeing a real domino effect in other regions. That Saudi-US nuclear deal we just mentioned, it is actively sparking fears of a new arms race in the Middle East. Over in The Hague, the International Criminal Court member states just voted to dismiss Chief Prosecutor Khan. And back in the South China Sea, things got heated when a Chinese ship fired a water cannon directly at a Philippine vessel, one that happened to be carrying a CNN crew right near a contested shoal.
All right, moving on to part two, domestic politics and the White House Correspondents' Dinner, focusing on the current turmoil and turnover in Washington. While all this international tension is bubbling, domestic political theater definitely took center stage this weekend at the revamped White House Correspondents' Dinner. If you've been reading the media analysis today, the consensus is pretty brutal. President Trump's highly anticipated speech basically bombed. The headlines agree that his jokes fell flat and ultimately drew widespread ridicule in the aftermath.
So what actually went down at the podium? Well, the president grabbed attention by joking about a potential 2028 run, and then made a pretty controversial pivot to frame the ongoing war in Iran through a comedic lens. But the sound bites outside the dinner were just as wild. He bantered with a reporter about contaminated lettuce, reacted to a World Cup champion wearing a MAGA-inspired hat, and even separately suggested basketball star LeBron James might be a racist.
Stepping back to look at the broader political timeline, though, there are some huge structural shifts happening behind the scenes. Here in 2026, the Trump administration is dealing with record turnover in its second term. Also this year, former U.S. Senator Joe Manchin is jumping back into the political orbit, officially kicking off a new independent experiment. And looking just ahead to 2028, the DNC has officially picked South Carolina to host the very first Democratic primary, fundamentally shaking up the early election map.
Okay, on to part three. Let's talk tech, business, and AI. We've got some incredible breakthroughs today, but also some major breakdowns.
We are looking at a pretty jarring dichotomy in the business world today. On one side of the spectrum, SpaceX's Starship mega rocket successfully hit some key milestones in its first big test since the company's IPO, a huge leap forward. But then, you contrast that with traditional manufacturing, and embattled automaker Volkswagen just saw its profits drop by 10% and is now considering massive job cuts. It's a stark reminder of just how volatile the economy is right now.
And speaking of rapid, volatile shifts, over on the wild frontier of artificial intelligence, there is a fascinating modern cautionary tale today about how an OpenAI model actually went rogue. It really highlights how incredibly fast this tech is evolving and the totally unprecedented, unpredictable challenges developers are facing to keep it contained.
Rounding out the business news, AI firm Anthropic is paying a settlement to the publisher of Harry Potter, we're also seeing a tech titan's ex-wife losing her court battle for a larger slice of this ongoing AI wealth boom. Over in the entertainment space, Paramount agreed to delay its Warner Bros. Discovery takeover for a few months. And back in the political economic sphere, reports show President Trump's appetite for tariffs hasn't faded at all, which experts are warning could seriously reshape global trade dynamics.
Finally, let's move into our fourth beat: crime, courts, and society. We have some heavy justice and public health updates to get through.
First, a major update in a highly publicized and tragic school shooting case. During a courtroom hearing, suspect Colt Gray broke down describing his hesitation before the shooting. This audio confession was played out loud for the very first time as survivors watched, and it ultimately culminated in him officially pleading guilty to all charges.
The rest of today's Crime Blotter is a pretty grim judicial cycle. Some truly gruesome details involving chainsaws, bloodstains, and crucial cell phone data just emerged from the D4VD preliminary hearing. In New York, a suspect in a string of stabbings is now facing hate crime and attempted murder charges. In Michigan, investigators are piecing together a horrific scene where 8 people are found dead in a home after a fire and gunshots. And in Minnesota, the man who killed lawmaker Melissa Hortman was officially sentenced to life in prison. Shifting gears to public health, there is an incredibly alarming metric you need to know about today. That number? 35. As in, United States measles cases have officially hit a 35-year high.
And the crucial thing here is this is not just an isolated spike. This officially marks the second record-breaking year in a row for measles. Public health experts are heavily warning that this might just be the first of many preventable illnesses to surge back into the population. And adding to the medical concern, a massive cyclosporiasis outbreak has also just been linked to 4 additional U.S. states. Before we wrap up, we have to mention this heartbreaking environmental update: 15,000. That is the exact number of mangrove seedlings that one woman painstakingly and carefully planted to help restore her local environment. Tragically, a sudden flood came through and completely washed all 15,000 of them away. Just a very stark visual reminder of nature's unpredictable power.
So, as we pull back and look at this dense, wildly chaotic snapshot of today's news cycle, I want to leave you with this question. From escalating global wars and political theater to rogue AI and surging public health crises, which of these headlines is actually going to shape our tomorrow? Think about which of these shifts is going to have the most profound impact on our shared future. Thanks for joining me on today's Explainer, and stay curious.